my very first Zoom presentation, so fingers crossed. So we're going to talk today a little bit about what it took to start a native plant nursery in the center of the UP, in the center of a pandemic. And it certainly was an adventure. It was a very interesting time. And so I have a few stories to share that I thought you might be interested in. So as I was so kindly introduced, I'm Michelle Wietek-Stephens. I am a Yooper native. However, I've been to other places, I've lived in other places, traveled around, so I am familiar with other environments, other ecosystems, other growing habitats that people encounter. As was mentioned, I did have a career in environmental consulting, and then decided to quit that as my second job and focus on the primary job of raising my 3 rug rats. And we are an outdoorsy family. We're constantly out in nature, learning about things, exploring, checking out what grows where. So native plant business sort of worked really well for us. My husband, Todd, is the specialist in seed starting. He can tell you what all the stratification times are, mostly off the top of his head. He knows which ones need to be scarified and which ones need all the weird treatments and which ones are going to sit there in the plug flat for 3 years before they gift us with a leaf. My daughter Zoe is into the plants, but she's more on the artistic side, and she's going to be taking over the Instagram feed over the summer. Connor is an expert at accurately filling up plug flats with dirt. So that's really helpful. And of course, Tigger's just happy being a dog. Special shout out to my daughter, Selena. She has really taken off in this business. She is the one you will see with me at plant sales and at farmers markets. She's very capable of talking to people about plants at those things. She's really picked up a lot of plant information, and it's really been fun to see her blossom in this. And of course, it's hard to be productive unless you have a cat right in the middle of anything. So we have Loki, the greenhouse cat. So a little bit of background. My husband's dad, my father-in-law, is Vern Stephens from Designs by Nature LLC, just north of Lansing. And they have been operating a native plant nursery outside of Lansing for 25 years. They were doing this before native plants were cool. So we had this business in the family way before we started. And he's been talking to us for quite a while about, hey, do you want to start a native plant nursery up in the UP? I think it would really work out. And so we've been talking to him, but it was always a someday sort of thing. Yeah, we'd like to do that someday. It would fit in really well with our interests someday. But we had 2 professional careers. We had 3 little kids. We had our own big homestead to take care of. Someday did not seem like it was going to be anytime soon. But 2020 was a weird year. And after a bunch of months of pandemic schooling my kids, starting something new just seemed like a better idea than it had in the past. So one day Vern called us and said, hey, I'm placing an order for some greenhouses for some other affiliate nurseries. How about now? Want to start now? Do you want to do it now? Now? Really? So my husband and I talked about it. We took a walk. It was July of 2020. We took a walk, and we have a lot of space, and found a place that we would put the greenhouse. It would fit, it would work, it would be convenient. We could probably afford it. We talked about the worst case scenarios. Are we going to go bankrupt? Are we going to get divorced? Are our kids going to run away from home? And they all seemed to be things that we could manage and would be reasonably unlikely. So we thought it might be fun, and maybe now is the time. Everything is messed up anyways. It's 2020. What the heck? So on a July afternoon, I stood in my driveway and I called them back and I said, yes, we will do it. We'll give it a try. So 3 days later, I had sort of forgotten about the conversation. a FedEx truck pulls up in the yard and starts unloading boxes full of greenhouse parts. 3 days later, I have this giant pile of fans, louvers, thermostats, control panels, and oh goodness. So quick, we have to make a business. We didn't even know where we were going to put the pile of boxes. So first things first, we needed to get the greenhouse up because the semi truck, this giant semi truck, was going to pull up on our little rural road and unload this massive pile of stuff that we had to turn into a greenhouse. So we needed to get the site prepared, and the kids thought this was all great fun, way better than sitting at home doing pandemic schooling, that's for sure. So the greenhouse parts arrived. We managed to have a contractor that had done some work with us before who squeezed our project in. I don't know if any of you guys tried to get work done on anything in 2020, but it was hard to find people. So we were fortunate that we managed to get the site cleared in time because of course it's the UP and winter is coming. So we had to get that greenhouse up. Fortunately, again, we have a mentor in the family. Vern has built a few greenhouses in his day. And so he came up for a number of weekends, and you wouldn't tell it from these pictures. It looks lovely in these pictures, but it poured rain just about every time he came. So most of this greenhouse was constructed by very wet people. But Vern is experienced, my husband's an engineer, and the two of them, with the help of me and the kids, got the greenhouse up. It was lovely when it was done. It was so nice, so big. We could not imagine filling that thing with native plants. Could not imagine it. The plan was we were going to grow native plants along one side. We were going to park the tractor in one corner, and then we were going to have a big raised bed, and we were going to have the best tomatoes ever. It was going to be great. So, challenge number one, winter. In October, we had apparently gotten the greenhouse up just in time because we got hit with an ice storm followed by a pile of snow. And the dog, of course, was very excited, but we were a little bit less excited, but the greenhouse did not fall down. So greenhouse stayed up, challenge number one, overcome. There were a few other things to take care of in order to get a business going. So that was my project in the remainder of the fall and winter of 2020. And we became an actual business in December of 2020. And then the website had to be constructed and went live on my birthday on March of 2021. Some of you may have visited it. If not, do stop by www.upnativeplants.com. My children tease me because I say that to my phone so often. So we put together this website. It took me a while to get it looking the way that I wanted it to. It's pretty good right now. It still needs some tweaks. But why a web-based business? Vern's business is not web-based. He is focused mostly on plant sales, wholesale activities downstate, and he does some retail off his website, but it's mostly to people who already know what they want to buy. So I didn't think that route was going to work for me because in 2020, the UP had 300,000 people. Washtenaw County, which is the county right around Ann Arbor, had 372,000 people. So they had more people right around that city, and he could go to one plant sale in Ann Arbor and reach the entire audience that I have access to in the UP. So having a web-based business lets people find me, do their research, see what they want to buy, see what we have, pick out all the things that would work for their site, place their order before committing to a 3-hour drive from the West End or a 3-hour drive from the East End or the North or the South. We're fortunately centrally located, but the UP is a big place. So I was a little bit concerned, would the percentage of people in Washtenaw County who are into native plants be the same or similar to the percentage of people in the UP who are into native plants? We have a bit of a reputation as a backwater. I don't know, the Upper hip hick stigma that is carried around. I knew that there was some interest in native plants in the UP, but I didn't know how much. My experience had led me to have some doubts. So for one thing, there's the "it's already green enough" crowd. I mean, it certainly looks green if you've ever flown over it in an airplane. It's miles and miles of green. You don't get that if you fly over Washtenaw County for sure. So people even call it God's country. The advertising campaign for Michigan tourism is Pure Michigan. Michigan is pure, Michigan is clean, the air is fresh, the water is clean, everything is green and wonderful and beautiful. Come see Pure Michigan. In reality, pretty much every inch of the UP has been touched in some way. There used to be a lot of old growth forest that is essentially gone. There were a lot of massive fires of the slash from that logging operation that in some places scorched the topsoil and set topsoil development back in the UP probably 1,000 years. So things have been altered. People tried to drain the Seney swamp, that whole wetland thing. They dug trenches and tried to drain it and turn it into farmland. So the UP has been greatly altered by human habitation. Would people see that even here, when things are green, when there are things blooming in the ditches, that nature still needs a helping hand? I was not sure that they would, especially since I had experience with another group of people, and that is the dollar sign people. So this is a story from when I was an environmental consultant, and we were working on a site along the Lake Superior shoreline, and it has been an old industrial site. They removed all the industrial buildings that were there, and it was sort of a weedy field. They'd put in a road, they'd put in a bike path, but there was this weedy field. It wasn't a great field. It had a lot of spotted knapweed, but it also had some goldenrod and some other natives going in there. And weird people like me would occasionally leave the bike path and go walk through this field and look at the butterflies and the bees and the ants and the beetles and everything in there doing their thing. So in the office one day, we were discussing what was going to happen with that parcel when we were done with our environmental work. And I said, well, I hope it stays green space. And without missing a beat, one of my coworkers said, oh, the green space we have is underutilized. How do you underutilize green space? How is that even possible? So I think what he meant is dollar signs. You build condos on that field, it's very clear. Condos equal X number of tax dollars. How do you put that same valuation on green space? It gets trickier even if it's a soccer field, which is what his opinion of green space was. X number of soccer teams practice on this field. It comes out of our Parks and Recs budget. At least there's some numbers that you can put to that. But how do you put a dollar sign on a weirdo like me leaving the bike path and seeking some quiet and solitude and interaction with nature in this space? And even more so, how do you put a dollar sign on it when you remove me from the equation? And you're just looking at the value of that piece of property to the birds and the butterflies and the bugs. So I know that there is math out there about how green space benefits livable communities, benefits public health, but especially for a small town like Marquette, that math is not clear enough to make much of a difference because the field looks like this now. And I drive by it and I wonder where a bee is supposed to find breakfast. It is just kind of like a desert. And then the third experience that I had that gave me pause and wonder if anybody was going to be buying native plants in the UP, we went to a farmer's market in our local area. We live in a rural part south of Marquette. There's a lot of conventional farmers, and we went to the farmer's market as a vendor. We were invited. We thought it sounded like a fun time. We met lots of really cool people who were very happy about native plants, took a lot of business cards, asked a lot of questions. It was great. And then I was sitting there one day and this woman came up and started to ask me a question, and her husband said, She don't have no cabbages, Martha. She's selling lawn weeds. Lawn weeds. I'm selling lawn weeds. Okay. I guess I kind of am. I am selling the plants that people have poisoned for decades. Great, lawn weeds. It illustrated another aspect of the UP attitude, not widely held, but there are certainly people who have this feeling, especially in the rural agricultural farming community where I grew up. Nature is the enemy. It is out to get you. It is out to destroy your livelihood. It must be fought constantly and driven back and held back by any means necessary to keep it from taking you down. Nature will grow aspen trees in your camp road and you won't be able to get to your back 40. The milkweed will grow in the pasture and the cattle will have less to eat. The pines will shade out the corn. The pond will reduce your tillable acreage. Your tomato hornworms will eat your tomatoes. It'll literally take the food from your mouth. And worst of all, you're gonna have weeds in your lawn. So can't have that. So I wasn't sure if there were gonna be enough people in the UP to really make a go of this business. Are there enough people in the UP who think that this is an acceptable lawn or even a desirable lawn? Are there enough people in the UP who recognize that a tomato hornworm isn't just a bug that maliciously eats your tomatoes? It is a larva for a really cool moth that's almost the size of your hand. Are there enough people out there that are on board with that? I know I'm preaching to the choir in this particular talk, but trust me that I've met a bunch of people on the other side. The answer is yes. People bought the plants. As soon as the website went up, we had sales, people found us, they placed orders. It was great. We had a great year. The orders never stopped. And so many people said that they were glad that we were here, that they didn't have to drive to get native plants, that there were things that were local UP genotypes. People offered a lot of support. It was great. We had orders, we were a business, we were going, it was all good. What were we going to sell them? So at the time that all those orders were coming in March and in April and early May, this is what we had to sell. So we had these plug flats full of dirt and we had seed trays that were equally barren. And so that's where the watch seed never sprouts come in, because we stared at those trays of dirt. Come on, baby, come on, sprout, you can do it. We need you to be this big by the end of May. Come on, let's go. They sprouted. We got it right. We did the stratifications right. We did the moisture levels right. We did the temperatures right. They sprouted. And then we had dozens and dozens of trays of seeds, and each one of those trays turns into 6 to 12 plug flats of baby plants. So pretty soon our dreams of growing tomatoes in the back corner of our greenhouse was gone. It was full. And this was kind of an early picture in the bottom right there. We still had control of things. Things are lined up, they're neat, they're organized. It got worse. There were plants everywhere. They were tucked under the benches. They were in all the walkways. We were stepping over stuff trying to get through the greenhouse. There were so many plants in that greenhouse, and this year's going to be worse. So I don't know. But then right in the middle of all of that, we ran out of soil. So I called our supplier and I said, hey, we need a pallet of soil. And they said, great, how's August for you? That's a problem. So apparently, while the rest of the world was running out of toilet paper in 2020, the growing industry was quietly running out of peat moss and people to ship the peat moss and process the peat moss into potting soil and things like that. So there was a significant shortage of potting soil and growing mix out there, and it just could not be had through the channels that we were expecting to get it from. So we started driving around to the local places and trying out the potting soil that was available up here to see if we could find something that would work. And we quickly discovered that not any old potting soil would do. So these are 3 batches of lance leaf coreopsis, and they were all started and at the same time, all from the same batch of seed. The one on the left was from a potting soil that we tried that had a silica fertilizer added to it, and it just was not good. Even common milkweed died in that stuff, and common milkweed is about as weedy as weeds get. So there was something wrong with the soil. So the top right are the same seedlings that we took a spoon and we scooped them off the surface of the bad dirt, and we filled the plugs up partway with the good dirt. We did manage to find good dirt at a pot growing supply warehouse. Apparently they have the best dirt. So just in case you were wondering. So we transferred the plants onto the good dirt, and it looks like they've gotten their roots down into the good stuff, and they're starting to green up and pick up in size and catch up to their compatriots on the bottom right that were planted in the good dirt from the get-go. So the soil matters. We can't just grow this stuff in any old potting soil. It really, they're containerized plants growing in a nursery environment. They don't have access to all the resources that they would have in the outdoors. It's a constrained environment, and we have to use certain kinds of potting soil to keep them going. So that was one of the lessons. Once we had a handle on the growing of things, we were able to switch our focus a little bit from are we going to have stuff to grow and sell to what should we grow and sell? Obviously, we're a native plant nursery. We want to grow native plants. What's a native plant? It's generally defined as something that was here before settlers came. But what does here mean? Are we talking just the UP? Are we talking Michigan? Are we talking the Great Lakes Basin? How are we going to define native? So it would be nice to say that native is just the UP, but like I said, a lot of those habitats have been significantly altered. There are subdivisions on them. Swamps were drained, the forests were cut down and burned. Some of those habitats just aren't there. The whole structure is different than what it was. So if we limit ourselves just to UP plants, there may be habitats here where those plants are no longer suited. Also, people's goals are different. I had a client in the Sylvania Wilderness area. She thought that my plants weren't native enough, and that if she bought stuff from me, that she would be introducing a Southern Michigan species to her Sylvania Wilderness area property, and it wasn't native enough. Okay, great. We try to do as many UP genotypes and as many UP natives as possible, but yes, we do sell a lot of Southern Michigan prairie plants just because of our background. Not everybody is going for that sort of precision habitat restoration. Some people want nice gardens with nice plants. Some people are interested in collecting interesting plants. Some people are going for aesthetics where they want texture and color and certain bloom times and things like that. So especially with the habitat alteration in the UP, it seems like there is room for a lot of for a little bit of flexibility in the definition of what is a UP, a plant that is appropriate to grow in the UP. Obviously, if you want to support our insects, local genotype, locally raised plants are the best, but there are other goals. And then there's some gray areas. So pictured there is wild tobacco. Wild tobacco grows wild in lower Michigan, but it's actually native to Central America. And humans moved it from Central America all the way up to the UP, Native Americans. So it is essentially a domestic plant, but it was here before the European settlement. So is it native? I don't know, but it's really interesting. It grows really well with the prairie sage and the bearberry that we're trying to get started. We decided that we would that we would include this on our plant list as a native plant, but we try to be transparent. So if you look at the description of wild tobacco on our website, it will tell you where it comes from, how it got here, and you can decide for yourself whether that meets your definition of native. And then on our plant list, we have a column that says, is it a UP source? And then yes or blank. If it's a UP source, we identify that. So you be the judge. If you have a pristine Sylvania wilderness camp and you only want local UP genotype plants, you should be able to identify what those are on our website. If your scope is a little bit broader, then you can find that as well. So why would that lady be so concerned about UP genotype plants? So here's an example. This is a restored wetland near where I live. And swamp milkweed blooming, bees on it, great, looks lovely. Blue vervain blooming, bees on it, beautiful. The only problem is this is a picture taken in late August. These plants are not supposed to be doing this in the UP in late August. Frost is just about here. That swamp milkweed is not going to set seed in time for the seeds to mature if it's blooming like that in late August. So I'm not sure where the plants were sourced for this restoration project, but it probably wasn't any place particularly far north. So the schedule of these plants is off. It's going to affect their ability to reproduce and spread, which I'm sure is the hope in this restoration area. So a local genotype plant would have been probably a better choice for this. Another example, which unfortunately I don't have pictures of, is little blue stem. So last year we grew little blue stem grass from seed collected in the UP and seed collected in southern Michigan. And the little blue stem that was from the UP, as soon as we got a little bit of warmth, boom, it was out of there. It was sprouted, it was growing, it was like, go, 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 snow is coming. We got to go, we got to get our height, we got to produce our seed, we got to go. The southern Michigan little blue stem was like, maybe I'll germinate, maybe I'll wait till it's a little warmer, maybe I'll grow. It just wasn't having any of it. So it was really obvious that there is a difference between the local genotypes and the southern genotypes that are more adapted to the southern climates. So if you want to naturalize an area, try to get the local genotype plants because they're the ones that are going to reproduce for you. And a third reason to plant local genotypes is that we have local insects. Did you know that we have our own fritillary butterfly that is just in the UP? So we have a subspecies with a silly name of great sprangled fritillary that lives in the UP. And the host plant for these is violets. So I don't know if UP violets are any different and whether it matters or not to great spangled fritillary, but this is a unique insect to the UP. It very well may need unique traits that are tied to local genotype plants. So this is only one example. I'm sure there are lots of other UP local insects. If you can plant as many UP type plants as possible, then you're giving those insects the best shot. So I talked earlier about some of the challenges in the culture in the UP that made me worried about starting a native plant nursery up here. But there are also some really good things about the UP. So the first is that I'll never be bored as a nursery operator up here. There are so many habitats that they just don't have downstate. So we have the edges of the Great Lakes, the Great Inland Seas. I was amazed to find starry Solomon seal can be a beach plant. Did you guys know that? I always thought of it as a woodland plant. So here it is growing on the Lake Michigan shoreline near Nobbin Way, and those berries are striking. next against the beach sand, and it was doing really well there. So some really interesting habitats in the UP. So we have inland lakes and wetlands and marshy areas. We have dry pine forests. We have abandoned farm fields with sandy loam. We have rich, moist hardwood forests. We have sandy, stabilized dunes. And then one of my favorites is we have 3 inches of topsoil perched on the cracks of rocks on top of big granite boulders. Really interesting plants growing there. That's rock harlequin up on the top right, one of my favorites. Another thing that I like about the UP is that there is space up here. So my father-in-law and his clientele almost all live in suburbs. So he does some restoration projects with various agencies, but his personal clients that buy from him, they have a small yard and they need a small garden kit. He sells a particular garden kit of short plants just for the people that live in cities and need to keep things short and maybe not offend neighbors and homeowners associations and stuff. That is a big deal for him. He won't grow certain things because they're too spready. They're too big, and because they don't suit his clientele. Up here in the UP, I get to play with the big stuff. So people have acreage. They have 5 acres, they have 10 acres, they have bigger, and they can play with that. They want stuff that's going to spread in because there's no way they're going to naturalize this field by doing plugs every foot or foot and a half, unless they're super millionaires. And if you are, call me. But most people don't have the money to do a whole thing in plug flats. They're going to plant an area and they're going to hope the stuff spreads. That's what we're actually doing at our place. We're putting plugs in certain areas and we're sending them out, and they're eventually going to do their thing. So we get to play with some of the bigger stuff that spread and expand and are big and are tall. We get to play with the more aggressive species and see maybe how they can be used to battle invasives. That's something I'm really interested in, and I'm hoping to find out more about what we can use to combat some of the invasives that we have up here. Some people even want the really big plants because it can screen them from their neighbors. So I get to grow cutleaf coneflower. I get to grow Joe Pye weed. I get to grow common milkweed, all of which are generally considered too spready for that Ann Arbor garden. And people up here have room. So I have several people who are buying flats of cutleaf coneflower this year. That's a lot of cutleaf coneflower. They're going to have a lot of cutleaf coneflower. We've discussed it. They know what they're getting into. So, all right, it's going to be awesome. So one of the things that I get to play with are the things that are considered aggressive. We have Canada goldenrod growing on our property. It's probably the one that gets the worst rap out there as being an aggressive native. Indigenous Landscapes, I don't know if you heard about them. They did a really good blog post last year on Canada goldenrod and how Canada goldenrod moves into the habitat that is perfect for it, which is empty farm fields and other areas where there's not a lot of competition. And then, yes, it goes to town because there's nothing to stop it. We have Canada goldenrod growing in our orchard. You'd hardly notice that it was there. It's a really big, pretty goldenrod. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't go anywhere. The other plants around it keep it constrained and in line. And it's just pretty. It's a nice addition. So whether something is invasive or not depends in part on your habitat. So is this plant that's considered not invasive, aggressive, is this plant more suited to the environment than the stuff you're trying to grow? Maybe you're not growing the right stuff that is as well suited for your habitat as this thing that is considered aggressive. So it depends on your habitat and finding the plants that are best suited. So we're playing with that, and I really want to grow Canada goldenrod. I do. I don't know if anybody's ready to take that plunge, but I might add it to our goldenrod list just because it really is a gorgeous, tall, showy plant. But I don't want anybody to, have problems with it either. We'll see. So since I brought up the topic of goldenrod, I just want to shout out the positives of goldenrod. So first of all, goldenrod is innocent. It does not cause seasonal allergies. It is insect pollinated. You can see the bees on some of these pictures. Goldenrods are insect pollinated. They want their pollen to stay on the plant because they're waiting for a bee to come pack it on their legs or their abdomens or wherever they carry it and bring it to the next goldenrod and pollinate the next goldenrod over. That's how they pollinate. They aren't wind pollinated. The pollen doesn't drift. So it is not the cause of the seasonal allergies. Again, I may be preaching to the choir here, but there's still so many people that say, oh no, not goldenrod, I'm allergic to goldenrod. So goldenrod pollen does not cause seasonal allergies. It's ragweed. Ragweed is wind pollinated. Nobody notices the ragweed because the flowers are little and green and it's not blooming. When you look around, you don't notice it. Goldenrod is innocent. There is a perfect goldenrod for you out there. Not all of them are spready. Some of them are really well-mannered. Showy goldenrod is well-mannered. Blue stem goldenrod's pretty good. The stiff goldenrod tends to clump. There are goldenrods that will be well-mannered and play nice with the stuff in your garden, no matter what sort of habitat you have. So you should definitely, everybody should have goldenrod in their garden. It is a very important species for critters, for the late season bees, queen bees who need to stock up on resources for the winter, male bees who need to fuel up for that one last push before they freeze off, the butterflies that are migrating, the birds eat the seeds. It's just a really important plant and everybody should have one in their garden. So I encourage you to get out there and find the goldenrod that is the perfect match for you. Okay. Oh, look, the video loaded. So that's showy goldenrod there that the bees are on. And they just loved it last fall. They really did. So just a bit about the future before we wrap it up here. It was a very successful year. We're going to have a second greenhouse if we're going to keep this up. So I have to figure out how we do that and where we put it and all that stuff. We're not looking at a retail operation anytime soon. I know there's certain people that are disappointed in that, but it's just not in the cards for us. The amount of time that it would take to staff it and maintain it, for the return that we get, we need to devote that energy elsewhere. Also, our current greenhouse, it's not permitted for retail operations. We're not allowed to have retail here. We also don't want people driving up in the driveway at random times and expecting us to be home because we're not. We're out hiking. So we're not going to be doing retail anytime soon. If anybody out there has the dream of having a cute little retail greenhouse and they're looking for plants, we'd be happy to supply the plants, but operating a greenhouse is not in the cards for us. We're continuing to expand our line of UP species and UP genotypes and trying to de-emphasize the Southern Michigan prairie plants a little bit. When we do have species that are in the UP that we don't have local sources for, we're trying to find local sources for. Hey, if anybody's got cardinal flower growing on their site and they'd like to share a little bit of seed, if it's cardinal flower that is wild and not, from Lowe's, give me a call. So we're trying to expand our UP sources of things. We just added 30 new plants to the website. 20 of them were UP species. We're going to continue with farmers markets and plant sales. And if you would like to see us in person, I encourage you to jump on the website and check out the What's Happening page, and that'll list what farmers markets we'll be at. We're actually doing plant sales in Gogebic County, in Chippewa County, in Alger and in Marquette this year. So those are through the conservation districts. You can jump on your conservation district website and see when their plant sale is for your area. You can follow us on Facebook. You can follow us on Instagram. Theoretically, you can follow us on Twitter, but I don't tweet much. So it's not as active as some of the others. And you can also sign up on the website and fill in the contact form, and then I'll email you the blog posts when they come out. So that is what I had.
Thank you, Michelle. That was really wonderful. We've got a couple of questions in the chat for you. One of them is, do you know of any native plants that will grow under Norway maples? Which is a really good question because a lot of us happen to have those in our yard that we have to deal with.
So are you looking at shade, or are you looking at the chemical compounds that may be given off by the roots of those plants? I'm familiar with people having issues with oaks. Yeah, but I hadn't heard that there were any particular problems associated with Norway maple.
Sharon, if you want to type in your defining question there, then we can get to that. And in the meantime, Marcia is wondering about other native plants that play well with the Canada goldenrod to keep them in check, like you said.
So we have grasses. We have pretty dense grasses growing around them. There's why can't I think of the name? The vine that has the 5 leaves.
Oh, the Virginia creeper?
Yeah, Virginia creeper. There's Virginia creeper in the orchard as well. So there's a lot of grasses, both native and non-native. There's the goldenrod, there's pearly everlasting, there's spreading dogbane. So anything that's got substantial size and presence to hang out with the goldenrod and hold its own seems to be doing well for us.
Yes. Okay. Sharon has further said that the Norway maple shade and extensive root system is her problem there.
Okay. So you might want to try something like the columbine, because they don't like a lot of height around them, and they're able to grow in constrained root environments like cracks and rocks and things like that. I don't know if you're looking for something taller or something shorter, but you might be able to do something like a Canada goldenrod if you're looking for a shorter plant. We do have a shade collection on the website, so you can check out things there that will tolerate the shade aspect of it, and then see if you can find something that will grow in between the roots.
Carolyn piped in the chat here that reminding us that Norway maples do have a shallow root system close to the surface, so there's not a lot of soil. One thing that I have found useful in looking at other garden design magazines and websites is the idea that you can grow natives in pots, and then you can place them around in places of your yard that have holes, or say something big bloomed and then died. So don't be afraid of keeping some of your natives in pots that you can use in places that are hard to grow too.
Mm-hmm.
When I wanted to jump in on something else that you were talking about, Michelle, and that is how humans have touched the landscape. And I think a lot of people come to the UP and do think of it as being wild, and it certainly is compared to downstate systems that are mostly agricultural. But I think people also don't really realize that most of the UP was really forested, and we don't have that many. We had pockets of open habitats, marshes and bends and things like that, but I don't think the UP really had a lot of like acres and acres of fields, which is what we have now and what we're planting. So in some ways we are creating unique habitat types, right? And your yard is this unique habitat type. So if we're going to restore things, we probably have to plant a lot of trees. But if we want to improve our habitat for wildlife, then there's a lot of things that we can do in our yards and make our yards better habitat. We have to kind of remember they are all unique habitats.
And that is why we sell a lot of plants that are native to Michigan and weren't historically native to the UP, because the habitats are altered and the habitats that we have are better suited to some of those southern Michigan plants.
Yes, and also why it can be fun for us to grow these plants that are downstate, right? Because we do have this unique habitat that we're creating. And I think that we could have a long debate. We could have a whole seminar on the native versus non-native and what is native. It's a really good question and not necessarily easy to answer. But I think that you can easily say that we don't want to be planting non-native invasive plants. That's pretty clear. And that planting native plants to our region is better than planting things from Eurasia. And that, you know, it kind of circles down. And like you said, it also applies to your particular goals. But certainly, since it's your yard, making it pretty is a great goal to have as well.
Yep.
All right. So Michelle is looking for a ground cover for a sunny area with poor, shallow, rocky soil by the lake.
Okay. Any particular height? Is she looking for tall or?
Yes, maybe she'll type it in there. In the meantime, someone's also wondering if you sell trees. I don't think you're quite there yet.
Trees. We do sell shrubs. And you know, if she doesn't get back to us with height, we have a sandy soils garden kit. She could look at that and see which ones were the height that she was looking for. Most of those things are on the spreadier side for sandy soils. We don't sell trees. We are branching into shrubs a little bit. We're working on cultivating UP genotype 9 bark. In the meantime, I've gotten some 9 bark from a downstate nursery. We're adding in, I have a couple of spice bush. There's a little bit of red osier dogwood. So we're dabbling with that sort of thing. We also grow shrubby cinquefoil and New Jersey tea from seed. And then I'm dabbling in wild grape if anybody is looking to try the exciting wild grape.
The world of wild grapes. Michelle did get back to us. She was hoping for low growing plants.
Okay. Unfortunately, a lot of the super low growing plants that are out there are not native. The creeping Charlies and the sedges and stuff, or not sedges. The succulents are not native.
Those sedums.
Sedums. Yep. So wild strawberry makes a great sunny ground cover. It spreads by runners and it's very short. So that's a good one. Native plants, where you're using them as ground cover, you often want to have a mix of things that work together. I don't know if she's looking to mow or not, but we have an alternative lawn kit for sunny areas that has plants that can be mowed and used as a ground cover in with a lawn and add habitat to that. A lot of the sunnier plants want to be a little bit taller. If she wants to email me, I can take a look at it a little bit better. I can't flip up my website right now and fly through my inventory and have my pictures spark my memory. So
I'm sorry, I don't remember if you said that you do your blog posts, right, or your emails, but I have enjoyed some of the information that you throw out there from time to time too.
Great, glad to hear it. Yeah, I just write about the things that are interesting me at the moment. I have been dying to write about the native grasses of the UP, and somebody the sunny rocky area, June grass really likes that sort of habitat, so that might be something she might want to look at.
Great. We do have understandably some questions about deer resistant plants, so I don't know, do you have forget if you have a symbol on your site that will tell people? And that's actually one thing that we were talking about in our last Wild Ones meeting, is that deer resistant in one person's yard doesn't exactly apply to another person's setting either.
Yeah, it depends on how hungry the deer are. We have a lot of deer in our woods, a lot. It's nearly impossible for us to grow the woodland species because our deer herd is just so overpopulated and things are so overgrazed. They're stripping the hemlocks out of our woods. This one doll's eye baneberry sprouted on a steep slope hidden by a tree up above where the deer would normally browse. And so I had high hopes that it would survive, and it sprouted, the leaves came up, it flowered, and then I watched the deer take it apart one leaf at a time. And every time I walked the dog past it, there'd be a leaf missing and there'd be a leaf missing. And then eventually they just nipped off the whole flower or the whole seed head and it was gone. So even baneberry is not supposed to be particularly tasty to deer, but they got it. So
right.
things that have a strong scent, we successfully used bergamot to shield giant sunflower. So we planted giant sunflower. The deer were, again, every night nipping it down, and eventually they were going to take out the whole thing. So we planted bergamot around the whole thing, and not densely, not like a wall of bergamot, but enough bergamot that when the deer went for a bite, they bumped into the bergamot with its strong scent, and they don't really like that. So any of the mint family plants that have a strong scent, the prairie sage, the things like that are going to be deterrent to deer. Coneflowers can be spiky enough that the deer find them unpleasant. So those are always a good choice. And then you can use those plants to shield the more tender things. And the deer are sort of opportunistic browsers, and they won't fight their way through the bergamot to get to the tender things unless they're really, really hungry. So you can probably deflect them using some of the less palatable stuff.
One thing that Sue Trull, botanist for the Ottawa National Forest, suggested, I know she's trying it, I've been trying it in a few places on the Keweenaw Land Trust sites when we plant stuff, is to use brush fencing. So you can sharpen sticks and plant them in the ground so that the sharp point is up, and that could make it less safe looking to the deer. I've had like mixed results with it, but that might be something, if you had something particular that you were trying to save, but still wanted it to look somewhat natural. I don't know how natural bungee sticks look, but that might be something that you could try. We had another question about rabbit resistant.
Okay, go ahead.
Rabbit resistance was another question, and that's kind of like with the deer question, but go ahead.
So it's similar. I don't have as much information on rabbit resistance, and I know a lot of people have had problems with chipmunks as well, eating especially some of the plants that have bulbs like the blazing stars. So again, the scented plants, unfortunately, they don't work as well as a screen on the rodent populations, so they will get past the scented plants and get to the good stuff. But the scented plants might be able to hold their own against those critters. Somebody was talking about cocoa hulls as a deterrent around the more sensitive plants. Again, something scented and a little bit textured in a way that they don't like. So if I do, when I research a plant, some of our plant descriptions on the website are very bare bones, and some of them are a lot more detailed. The detailed ones are the ones that I've had a chance to research as I'm putting them up, or go back and research and fluff out the description. I try to include anytime I find information on something being deer resistant or rabbit resistant. If I know that that's the case, I will throw it into the plant description on the website.